Assalamu alaikum. The Yellow Wallpaper is a very famous short story written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. The story is published in 1892 and the setting of the story is late 19th century America. Before proceeding to see the story, let's read about the author. Who's the author? Charlotte Perkins Gilman was an American feminist writer who was the leading theorist of the women's movement in the United States. The story was written during the time period when the first wave of feminism was at its peak, which gives an important historical context to the story, and that also help us to analyze the story from feminist perspective as well. Now let's see the literary context of the story. The Yellow Wallpaper, it is a work of naturalism, and the movement of naturalism emerged in late 19th century in America, and this movement was an exaggeration of the realist movement. What does realist movement do? Realist movement emphasizes faithfulness to the real world and the criticism of society. The story Yellow Wallpaper has been analyzed from different perspectives by the critics, including psychological perspective, feminist, medical, and autobiographical perspective. The storyline is very much compelling, the description is very much compelling, and that has been analyzed from different perspectives by different critics. And the story is written, that is the first person narration, and this is the epistolary work of fiction. This is important to know that what is the epistolary work of fiction. These are the works of fiction which are written in the form of letters or other documents. As in the present story, we see the author is writing, the narrator is writing a diary, and that diary is later published, and that is a form of that is published in the form of a short story. Therefore, this is called the epistolary work of fiction. Now, moving towards characters, so there are two main characters of the story, the narrator and her husband John. Let's see who's the narrator. The narrator was unnamed. She was not named, which shows that she represents her being, her anonymity and her being unnamed means that she represents all the women of her age, of her time period, and of her society. The narrator was shown as a person who used to write and who loved to write, but who's not allowed to put in anything in writing or to do any form of self expression. She was not allowed to do writing. She was shown as an individual who was an imaginative person, who was an expressive person, and who's undergoing a rest cure. That rest cure involves a strict bed rest and no mental stimulation or writing, and this treatment of rest cure that was prevalent during the time period in which the story was being written. And in fact, if we go through the biography of the author Charlotte Perkins Gilman, we see that she also had undergone through this rescue treatment, and most probably that was the reason that she had included this element in the present story too. So here the autobiographical implications of the story are also, this is indicative of the autobiographical implications of the story. And the narrator, she was fixated on the wallpaper, and her fixation, her association, her fascination with the wallpaper results in her dissociation with the outer world and with the real life. Her disease, her predicament, her psychological conditions, and her dissociations with the everyday life they develop with the development of the story, and they develop because of all the inhibitions present in our story, and they develop because of the characters and because of the people who are present in her life and who impose restrictions upon her life and who do not let her express herself. And these are the reasons that the narrator wanted to point out and wanted to draw the attention of the readers towards. Moving on, we see the character of John, who's the narrator's husband. John is presented as an individual who's by profession, who's a physician by profession, and the narrator describes her in the lines, and I've directly quoted these lines over here. And she says that John is practical in the extreme. He has no patience with face and intense horror of superstition, and he scoffs openly at anything that is not to be felt and seen and put down in fingers. Means he could not understand anything which is abstract. He is a physician, and perhaps that is one reason I do not get well faster. So the story is full of irony, full of dramatic irony, and that is very, the storyline and the descriptions, they are really very much compelling. And she depicts John as a rational individual, but not an understanding individual, not an understanding husband. He's shown as dominating and authoritative, and an individual who does not let her move with her own will. She is not allowed to even make a choice of her own room, and there are ample other things which are present in the text which help us to understand and which point towards the dominating personality of her husband John. And he is also presented as a caring husband, but that too is presented in an ironic light. And ironically, she shows that he was a caring husband. Because why ironically? Because every treatment of him that goes wrong. And she also states he's very careful and loving and hardly lets me stir without special direction. I have a scheduled prescription for each hour in the day. He takes all care for me, so I feel basely ungrateful, grateful not to value it more. So this irony is also present through these lines. And he was also shown as an individual who was a reflection of his society, and he's presented as a man of his age, as a man of his time period. And we must remember that this was the time period when the first wave of feminism was at its peak, and this first wave of feminism that came as a reaction to the patriarchal system and to the gender inequality present in the society, in the American society. So we must keep this in mind before we try to make the analysis of the characters as well as the themes. The themes which are prevalent in the story, they are the themes of gender inequality, the themes of patriarchal society, women's subordination, lack of family support, lack of companionship, as well as the negative effects of rescue treatment, the constraints on writing or expression, desire for freedom, desire for independence, desire for escape, and the theme of helplessness, theme of powerlessness, they are prevalent in the story, and we could find them easily from the textual course. When we read the text, we could find instances from the text which support these themes. And whenever we write about these themes, we needed to support them with the textual course. And now moving towards the yellow wallpaper as an important symbol in the story, as well as as the title of the story. As a title of the story, it is very much significant, and as a symbol, this is also very much significant. This is a symbol which develops with the story, and this is the symbol. This is also a symbolic image of narrator's condition, as that has a close association with the narrator's condition. The more the narrator is getting associated with the yellow wallpaper, the more she gets dissociated with the outer world. And our predicament that increases with our increasing association with the yellow wallpaper. Therefore, we see that there is a closer association between the narrator and the yellow wallpaper. And on the other hand, this symbol also represents women imprisonment in marriage, that represents domestic life. And the color yellow, the wallpaper could that be of any other color, but here the yellow color has been used by the writer author deliberately. And this, the yellow color has association with illness, and this represents the social structure, patriarchy. This represents domestic life, traditions, culture, medicine, and particularly it is associated with unpleasantness. It is presented as something, we if we see in the text, so we see that this yellow wallpaper has been presented as something which is unpleasant, which is unclean, which is filthy, which is unattractive, and that has a formless pattern, a complex pattern in the beginning, that is a formless pattern, and the writer tries to figure out its organization. And later at the end, when she figured that out and when she had resolved that pattern, that had ended into a complete collapse of her, into a complete mental and psychological collapse. So we see that the this yellow wallpaper as a symbol and as a title is very much significant. Now we have a look at the textual course, and these textual course are very much important, and they support our themes. And here I have directly taken the course which support these themes of gender inequality, patriarchal society, helplessness, powerlessness. And we see this quote, John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in marriage. This occurs in the very beginning of the text, and this is very deep, and that conveys the layers of meaning. And that this is something which was common during that time period in the society, that men used to laugh at women, they used to make fun of women, but this was something which was expected by the men. This was not something which was unexpected. And then there is the repetition of one line, and what can one do, which actually hints at the powerlessness and which hints at the helplessness of the narrator. And in a way, it hints at the powerlessness and helplessness of the women of that society. And what can one do? And later on, she also says, and what is one to do? And we also see that our husband is a physician, our brother is a physician, and they say the same thing. And therefore, upon their recommendation, she takes medicines, and they forbid her to do any writing, and she does not do these writings. And I, as you say, I did write for a while in spite of them, but it does exhaust me a good deal having to be so sly about it, or else meet with heavy opposition, because whenever she has to write, she has to do that sneakily, and she hide that from them because they do not allow her to do this writing. And thus this hiding and this being sly and this sneakily writing thing, that exhausts her a good deal, which is not good for her mental conditioning. And next thing she says, that I take pains to control myself before him, before her husband at least, and that it makes me very tired. So these are the things, these are the social restrictions which make her more tired. And then she says that I don't like our room a bit, I wanted one downstairs, but John would not hear of it. She's not allowed to even make a choice of her room. Then there was also lack of companionship and loneliness. And as he says, John is away all day and even some nights when his cases are serious. I'm glad my case is not serious. Irony. The story is full of dramatic irony. And she says that she wanted to have a company of her cousins Henry and Julia, but he says that she could have this company only when she would get well. And she says, I wish I could get well faster. And there is another instance that shows that she lacks there is a lack of companionship. And this was the case when she says that there was one chair that always seemed like a strong friend. So a moment occurred when she started finding friendship in the inanimate objects like chair and old bureau, which also convey that she does not have any companionship in the real world in the form of the real human beings. And here these are the lines that tell the lines about the yellow wallpaper, that how does she find the yellow wallpaper repellent in the beginning. and she says that the color is repellent, almost revolting, smoldering, and she does not like it a bit. She wanted that to be removed, but John does not do that. And here these are the lines that show her regret, and the lines that he laughs at me about this wallpaper, and the fact that her husband has a mocking attitude towards herself. And then there was these are the lines which support the theme where the people put constraints on writing and constraints on the freedom of expression. And I think sometimes that if I were only well enough to write a little, it would relieve the press of ideas and rest me. But I find I get pretty tired when I try, because she has to be sly about that. And she tried last night, so she was not allowed to do this writing, but she believes that if she is allowed to do writing and to express herself, that would do her good. But nobody believes in her, because she was the woman of that society, and women are not to be believed in the society, rather men. And then the negative effects of rescue, desire for independence, desire for escape. These are, we may see that these lines are supportive of these themes. And this was a time when when the mental and psychological collapse has started, and when her psychological condition has started worsening, and she's saying that life is very much more exciting now, and she's more quiet. And now this is the pattern. She has started working at the pattern of the yellow wallpaper. And at the end, what happened, she locked the door and she creep by daylight. She can't do that at night because John would suspect something at once. And this was at the end when she was creeping, and John found her creeping, and he collapsed on her way. So that was the tragic end of the story, where a complete collapse, a complete mental and psychological collapse of the narrator had occurred due to all these restrictions upon self-expression, due to the negative treatment of rest cure, and many more. And now these are the questions for study and discussion. Have a look at these questions. For exam purpose, you may prepare these questions. They would be really helpful. You may have a look at what is important about the title. You may need to work at the yellow wallpaper as an important symbol of the story, as well as an important title of the story. Next, you may, so that's also associated with it, that how does the narrator's description of the wallpaper change over time? How is the wallpaper representative of domestic sphere? And why does the narrator say, what can one do? Theme of helplessness, powerlessness. Why do you think Charlotte Perkins Gilman wrote the yellow wallpaper? Historically, here you may write upon the autobiographical aspects present in the story. For that, you need to go through the biography of the author and then find out the instances present in the story. Then, what are the conflicts in the yellow wallpaper? How does Charlotte Perkins Gilman reveal character in the yellow wallpaper? What are some themes? And why is the yellow wallpaper considered an essential reading in feminist literature? So, from feminist perspective too, you may prepare the questions. Hope that was helpful. Thank you.